Welcome to our July 23rd episode of Right Now. I'm Chris Reddy. We are coming to you from downtown Willimantic, 95.3 FM Studios, WILI, and we have two great co-hosts today in studio with us. First one is returning for this is your third or fourth time being on?
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, Brian Saucier, our candidate for state representative for the town of Windham, is joining us. Thank you, Brian, for being here.
Thanks for having me back, Chris.
And our second co-host is going to be Sara Beth Rowe from Windham. You might know her from social media fame as the Windham Town Hall monitor.
Yep.
How are you doing, Sara?
I'm doing great today. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And one of the most recent news stories in the state from a political perspective, obviously, that we have to bring up right away at the beginning of our show is the debate that took place on Channel 8 last night between Governor Lamont and the primary opponent that he is facing coming up in a couple of weeks, Josh Elliott. Before we talk about this, I do want to remind everybody that Connecticut is a closed primary state. You still do have time, if you want to participate in the primary election, to change party affiliation. You have to either be a Democrat or a Republican registered voter in order to participate on August 11th. The deadline and the cutoff is the day before at noon.
Yep.
You have to change party designation. It doesn't mean that you have to stay that party designation forever,
Correct.
but it does allow you to vote in this primary process. That's important because when you look at the statistics across Connecticut, we have about 41% unaffiliated voters in Connecticut.
Yes.
None of those people get to participate at this point.
Exactly.
So this is something that is very important. A decision is being made by two parties, one of which accounts for about 32% of the population, one of them about 22 to 23% of the population. Only about 50% of the people are even eligible to vote in this primary election.
Right.
So if you want to participate, it's very important that you change that party affiliation. Obviously, you are only allowed to vote in the primary for whichever party you are affiliated with. So let's get to what happened last night in the debate. This is something that was kind of being awaited by much of the public to really be able to see head-to-head the distinction between our two Democratic governor candidates. And it is very significant, as we spoke just before the show started, that this is the first time in 50 years that in the governor's race there has been a Democratic primary.
Yeah,
So
78, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep, very significant in that.
And this was the only planned debate between these two, I believe.
I believe so, but what I've heard is that there is a community organization that is trying to get a debate on stage for specifically the property tax issue. That's something I'm starting to see on social media there. But in this debate last night, we talked just before the show started. We all kind of saw clips or watched it. I watched the whole thing to kind of get an idea of what I was going to see for the next couple of months with messaging that's coming out. Anybody want to weigh in on what they felt some of the takeaways were from this debate last night?
Elliott's claim was a progressive income tax on the wealthy will bail out working class towns.
I did hear that.
And Lamont defends his record of economic growth and steady municipal aid without raising rates. Same old.
Yes, same old. We've heard this before. But also, it was very interesting to me that with his history as the governor, all of a sudden, this is the time where he says, hey, look, I gave all this extra money.
Right.
I adjusted the educational cost-sharing formula. I gave this municipal loan, but it doesn't say it's a one-time deal.
Right.
So, yes, we are hearing some of that same messaging. One of the things that I have to say about it is I thought that it was kind of boring. There was not those kind of taglines that you could say, wow, that was a zinger, or he got him, or even that there was something that was a very viral moment.
Right, that was
this.
the newspaper headline. You know, it was a polite debate.
Yes, very much
nothing
so.
contentious. No gaffes recorded. No memorable lines from either direction. And it was just kind of a long, another event in the long trend of the incumbent the challenger has to come from the left for the Democrat Party, and the challenge has to come from the right on the Republican Party, and then the incumbent just tries to play themselves off as the stable, every guy centrist.
Yeah. Yep.
So that was just that's exactly
He
how
has
it
the
was last
history
night.
to back that up.
Yep.
He does, but I forget the exact year.
I'm
but,
not saying it's
but
a good
his
history.
nickname was when maybe he was primarying against Malloy, or however it played out when he was first coming on the scene. What, like 10, 12 years ago, third term now, and his nickname was Red Ned.
Yes.
Was it?
That was
I do remember
when
that.
he was when he was a new face on the scene, and now here comes Josh Elliott, who I think is self-proclaimed democratic socialist or whatever. Like he's certainly coming significantly to the left
Certainly.
of
yes.
Lamont.
I think
Yes.
he's progressive, right?
Yes.
Well, whatever,
Because-
whatever label he's attaching to himself,
so
it's the
many.
same concept.
So many.
And one thing that I do want to take out from what Josh Elliott suggested, and this is something that now we're starting to hear a little bit more because of the push for decreasing our electrical rates in Connecticut. One of the things that I heard is allowing the towns to now have their own, or have a basis for their own distribution, and basically setting up municipal distribution of electricity within municipalities in Connecticut. And the first thing I thought was, maybe that will work for a Greenwich or a New Canaan or a rich town that could do something like that. Out here, how are we going to have municipalities that will be able to keep up with maintenance and infrastructure and storm damage and
great question.
just general improvements? I don't think that that's a reasonable solution at all to this. I think there are things that we can do to definitely make electrical rates more affordable, but I don't think that offering some of the towns in Connecticut an opportunity to separate and do something on their own, it's another one of those one-size-fits-all kind of statements that many of the towns in Connecticut are not going to be able to see any advantage from this.
Well, one size fits all is all you can get with top-down governance.
Yeah.
But we do have a few examples locally of, and I'm not sure on the details of what exactly they do, but like Norwich Public Utilities,
Yes.
Basra Light and Power, they're independent, more or less. Are they
the
generating
other end of
all
the
their own
state?
power? I'm not so sure.
No, but there are differences in each one. But you have to remember that also those in general have been around for a number of years. So
Right.
they were able to get in at a much cheaper rate. Imagine having to buy the infrastructure from Eversource in this current market.
Right.
You would have to, a small town like Scotland would have to come up with, I can't even imagine the number of millions of dollars in order to
Right.
buy just simply that infrastructure.
Yep.
And you look at a lot of these towns around here, we're struggling to even be able to keep the town staff that we have because of budgetary requirements, and now you want to add a whole nother division of electrical
true.
distribution. So
We need solutions for the solutions? That doesn't sound good
Yeah.
to me.
there's a lot to it, but that was one of the things that I took away from what Elliot said as part of his plan for helping to relieve some of the electrical rate unaffordability that we're seeing in Connecticut. But to go back to what Sara said about both Elliot and Lamont with regard to taxes and further taxing the rich, one thing that I heard from Lamont was that would only happen when absolutely necessary. And that, I think, is what kind of separated him from the progressive Elliot in this statement. But my takeaway from listening to the whole thing was that I really didn't hear anything that is going to directly affect affordability in Connecticut. I heard some blaming. I heard some, well, this is what I've done, and it really has not helped because we're still feeling the squeeze right now. But I didn't hear anything that was really going to make a profound difference in the average taxpayer, electrical ratepayer, or simply resident of Connecticut from either one of them.
Because there really wasn't anything that was different.
Yeah.
Like what new solutions, new ideas were floated last night? We're already taxing the crap out of
Everything.
anybody that has any 2 pennies to rub together. They're getting taxed. So, here comes our new solution is, we just got to increase taxes on the people that it's politically expedient to.
Yeah, and we, as a state, also already have benefited from very rich people leaving estates in the state of Connecticut. There's been times in the past few years where the only reason why we have the surpluses that we do is because, an estate that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars is in Connecticut, and they're able to claim some of those volatile type taxes that you can't guarantee on. That's something that's happened regularly, but as soon as you start taxing people too much, it's that delicate balance. As soon as you start taxing them too much, those rich people that have the ability are going to leave Connecticut.
Do you think they will?
Yeah, we've seen it happening in New York,
Yeah,
in
that's a problem.
Massachusetts,
California.
California. At some point, you're going to hit that tipping point where that person who has the funds to be able to leave, and I'll explain that in just 1 second, they're going to. Or they're going to simply shift their money into other areas where they are not being taxed at the same rate in Connecticut.
And they've already been doing that for
Yes,
decades.
correct.
The wealthy people are the ones that start, own, run, operate businesses. And what's been our trend for 4 decades on that in Connecticut?
I mentioned something on Monday's show of Unfiltered with Mike Saucier, and this was an experience that I had about a week and a half ago at a door when I was door knocking. And this gentleman said to me, I can't afford to live in Connecticut anymore, but it is so expensive here that I can't even save money to leave. I feel like I'm being held hostage. And I think that for the average person, that is the point that we're starting to get to, where your options are so limited that you are literally stuck here having to pay taxes that keep going up every year, electrical rates keep going up a year, health insurance costs that keep going up every year, and at a rate greater than what they can keep up to with their incomes. So we're at that point now where I think a lot of people are really starting to recognize that unaffordability is that big issue that we need to correct here in Connecticut.
Yeah.
So now to talk about something just a little bit different, but kind of keep it in the similar realm here. We have Sara, who has done a great job in the past few months since starting some of her social media. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to not only talk a little bit about what you're doing, some of the things that we're seeing here, because clearly one of the big issues in the town of Windham is affordability. That's why we are in this referendum.
We are the
stagnation
number
there.
one distressed in the state, I'm pretty sure, right?
We can't talk about that actually because I do have something that relates to that. But yes, there are, when you look at the list of the 20, we'll say the financially distressed communities in Connecticut, Windham definitely is on that list. There are several other towns nearby that are on that list also of 20, including Plainfield and Sprague and Sterling. And it's not just those towns, but even other towns across the state. We are seeing that the budget referendums were rejected on first votes, sometimes rejected on second votes. Towns are now going to third votes, and that's one of the things that you've been reporting on in the past few weeks in Windham.
We don't have to go to a third referendum either. They can just set the budget if they want to set the budget. It's got to stay the same, but
exactly,
that's the
without
issue.
change.
What about inflation? What about, but Windham, we want to see the line item. We want to see where it's going before we say yes to spending any more money. That's
Sure. And you
that's
can
what it
clearly
is.
see that on social media with the commenting that's happening, that people are concerned. You can see that by the referendum votes. It's not that they are saying no, they want transparency.
Yes.
And they want the
They don't want to
town
be bullied
council to
into
be,
it either.
accountable for the way that this money is being spent. So before you give us a report on what's going on, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing on social media, what your new platforms are, so that people can follow you and see some of the information that you're providing? Go ahead, Sara.
So I am on Substack, the Windham Patch, and Facebook. I'm looking to broaden my audience. I'm known as the Windham Town Hall Monitor, and I try and bring neutral facts about the meetings, unbiased facts about the meetings, but my own bias can come in to that sometimes because it is I am a watchdog, you know. I can't, some things are not, you can't be neutral about. And like what happened at the meeting the other day, the town manager said that they weren't pushing anything forward when it was really just a formality, the meeting going and asking the town council for money for the non-union workers, because the union workers were already paid, and he didn't tell us that first. Money was already paid for, spent, and he said it wasn't being pushed through. It was pushed through before the meeting, and so they had to agree to spend a bridge of $90,000 to ensure that the union workers were getting paid, but it had already happened. So it's the transparency of it all is sorry, I'm not very good at
It's okay, you're doing great.
Yeah.
That's your big concern right now, is that
The transparency. Tell us what's happening.
Okay. Now, when you're on Substack now, as you said, what are the benefits of reading the material that you're providing on Substack versus another social media platform like Facebook?
So Facebook, it's hard to read long text with Facebook. Substack, the format is so much easier to read, so much easier for me to explain. So I would follow on Substack over Facebook. I'm no longer going to be posting long text anymore on Facebook because I feel the algorithm messes with the long text. So
sure. And when you are posting, I've noticed on many of your articles that you've provided, you always make sure to provide links to sources and information that you have so people can fact check themselves.
Exactly.
This stuff, and that's really important. Is that better on Substack?
Oh,
than
big
on Facebook?
time. Oh, yeah, because you can plug it, and if you use links on Facebook, they push your stuff back at the end of the algorithm, at the bottom. So yeah.
What are some of the things that you're working on coming up?
Right now, I am looking into the Board of Education and the school administration, and them using school to pass the budget.
We've heard about that a couple of times when I've been on Unfiltered with Mike before. He has mentioned things like that. And you do have to look at the timing of this referendum.
Yeah. Well, they admitted
important.
it, too.
Yeah.
They said the Board of Finance chair said there's a new law where they're allowed to. I can't find that law.
I'm going to have to take a look into that also. I know that there are very strict requirements through the SCEC and the Secretary of State's office on the conduction of these elections and the format that has to be followed and how there has to be security for those tabulators, that they have to be locked for a period of time
14
following.
days, yeah.
Yes, which means that during that whole time you can't be doing testing, updating, checking the machines, servicing the machines, and none of that can be done. So it greatly decreases the window of opportunity to get that done. So now you have a period of 14 days where nothing can be done with these machines. You have a short period of time between that point and when the machines have to be calibrated and ready to go for
they have
the
13
subsequent
days,
election.
I think.
So we're really kind of cramming this all into a short time frame to
those
make sure
poor
that,
registrars.
to make sure this all gets done. And are we safe to say that that type of concern from the Registrar of Voters Office is going on deaf ears?
Oh, big time. Big time. They were asked for their recommendation, and they still didn't follow their recommendation, which I thought was messed up. The Board of Finance did that to them. Yeah. Yeah, it's been rough.
Well,
but we're
we'll
watching.
See. Yeah, yep, absolutely. And that's what you have to do. And you're doing a great job at it. So I please recommend anybody who wants to keep up on this information and, get a independent perspective on things that are going on from someone who really is dedicated to looking for this information and digging for this information and finding out why things are happening. You can follow Sara on Substack. It's the same Wyndham Town Hall Monitor name for that. Now, were you the hall monitor in school?
No. Oh my gosh. Nope.
But you are now.
I am now.
Because I like that play on it, how there's the hall monitor.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
good.
I liked
So,
that too.
Yeah, you did
I
a
was
good
like,
job.
I got to do that.
Name. So keep up the good work. I'm glad
Thank
that
you.
you're here to join us.
Thanks for having me.
Any comment that you want to make on that thing? You're a Wyndham resident and taxpayer. How do you see kind of some of this stuff?
Yeah, it's a
progressing?
pretty. This is again not the first time this has happened. I remember the last few cycles of the budget going to third round.
Wasn't it in December one time a few years
Yeah,
ago?
like it's
it went all the way to December.
It's gone
It was
many
December
rounds
20th
before,
or something like that.
and they just and I'm not intimately familiar with the details of, but what I could see from the outside is sometimes they even like a minuscule change from one to the other. They're really just banking on wearing people down, just wearing them down,
Such a minuscule
and
change.
just eventually people lose interest or they forget or they just move on with their life.
Yep.
But the stuff with the let's use the kids as props in order to get the vote we want. Like that's ugly. That's just naked manipulation.
They did that
And-
for the public hearing when they were trying to get the Board of Finance to give them the money.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Right, and it solves some of the problems that are causing people to vote no on these.
Absolutely.
Instead of just trying to wear them down, circumvent them, or otherwise, negate the will of the voting public.
Yep. Absolutely. So one thing that I want to kind of change topics here just a little bit, and for the last couple of minutes, because we're getting to the bottom of the hour, we're going to be taking our commercial break in a few minutes here. Monday, I didn't have time on Mike's show to bring up something, and I'm almost glad now that I didn't, because there was a second incident that happened, and this is something that we've talked about on the show before. I don't know if you were aware, but on Sunday night, July 19th, it was around 8 o'clock at night in West Haven on I-95, a whole pack of ATVs and dirt bikes and scooters blocked I-95, blocked in a woman who was in an SUV, and I don't know if there was a prior conflict between this driver and the pack of dirt bikes and ATVs that were riding down I-95, but they blocked the highway, got off their motorcycles and quads, went over to the driver, physically tried to pull her out of the vehicle, and she ended up driving away, but crashing into one of the dirt bikes.
Oh, no.
This continued down I-95, and then they all got off the next exit, and that was it. But this was caught on a traffic camera. We reported last week how Connecticut has the highest per capita automatic license plate reader and flock cameras in any of the New England states, including Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey. This is still becoming a problem, and it's becoming more of a problem because the very next day in Southington, another group of dozens of people on e-bikes and scooters and dirt bikes surrounded a guy on a motorcycle. They robbed him, knocked him off the motorcycle, assaulted him, and he was stabbed with a sharpened screwdriver. Right? When they arrested two of the people that were involved, one of them was 13 years old.
Oh my gosh.
This, we've all seen it. It happens in Wyndham. It happens in all the towns around here that people are driving motor vehicles that are not registered, not insured,
No headlights.
surely not safe for roads in the way that they're driving. And I've come from a background where I grew up riding dirt bikes and quads. I still ride dirt bikes and quads, but I ride it on private property. And I think that when you look at other New England states that have instituted something that allows people a place to ride by registering and generating income for things like allowing property owners to say, yes, you can cut through a corner of my property and I get a tax abatement for some of that. to allow and to facilitate people to move from one, say, state-owned parcel of land to another. There are opportunities that Connecticut could have done to allow people some sort of an avenue to participate in this type of recreation. But right now, it seems like this is just getting to be more and more of a free-for-all. And I want to say that I think that a lot of this is precipitated by social media. Because when you go onto social media and you get into the algorithms and you start looking at things, if I start looking at videos that have to do with motorcycles and quads and stuff like that, all of a sudden I start getting into the feed of people who are participating in these type of events, and they're wearing cameras. With the technology that we have today, don't you think that we could be able to somehow track some of these people better and identify them and not allow this type of stuff to happen? So we're going to go to our commercial break right now, but we'll start this again. And why don't we open up the phone lines also, because we have had callers on this before, 860-456-1400. We're going to our commercial break. Thank you for listening to Right Now on 95.3 FM WILI. Welcome back to Right Now. I'm Chris Reddy. In studio, we still have with us Sara, Beth Rowe, and our producer Matt helping us out as always. Thank you, Matt. We appreciate it. 95.3 FM, WILI, 1400 AM. You can also find us in a podcast format on WILI.com. And we record in studio with video that you can find on YouTube by searching Right Now in WILI. You can also tune in to Spectrum Public Access Channel 192. That is Tuesdays at 6:30, Saturdays at 7. It plays the previous week's episode of this. Oh. So there's a number of different formats. I am not on Substack, as Sara is with the Wyndham Town Hall Monitor. But I do suggest, as you probably heard in the first segment where we talked about this, that if you are looking for specific information related to items within the Wyndham town government, Sara does a great job of providing that in a brief but very detailed and very organized manner, so that you can kind of get a really good perspective from a independent person who is not affiliated with the actions of the government here, just simply looking in from the outside and giving a good perspective there. So I encourage everyone to go and check her out there on both Facebook and Substack, which you said is the preferred method for doing these type of formats of reporting on things that are happening. Just before the break, I highlighted two pretty scary incidents that happened within the past week in Connecticut surrounding what are being termed now ride-outs. And this is the groups of unregistered, unauthorized ATVs, dirt bikes, e-bikes, scooters, mopeds that are seeming to happen every so often now that it's nice weather and everybody wants to be doing things outside.
Is it usually just a young crowd, too?
I can't necessarily say that. I've seen some of the videos. I saw both of the videos related to this one. There was actually video related to just the one in West Haven. There was only photographs of the one in Southington of the group. But there was actually video of what happened in West Haven. If you weren't listening to the first segment, it was basically two incidents where large groups of people riding ATVs, dirt bikes, mopeds, scooters, e-bikes congregated around people that were either registered motor vehicle drivers, or in the case of the Southington incident, it was a motorcycle that was surrounded by these people. And there was some legislation that was created this past legislative cycle talking about the enforcement of street takeovers. And I think that is a little bit of a different circumstance, even though they're very closely related, because oftentimes we see with these street takeovers where there's an announcement on social media that there's going to be a gathering at a particular intersection or area or parking lot, excuse me, and it's more than just simply these groups of riders that we're seeing going around. It's actually a large crowd that accumulates, and oftentimes, there's some stunting of vehicles, where they're doing donuts and burnouts, and people are setting things on fire. So there's other implications of this. But with these two, they both seem that they had really kind of these two that happened this past week, one on the 19th, one on the 20th, they seem to kind of escalate from groups of people who are out kind of horsing around on their motorcycles and dirt bikes and ATVs to now involving motorists who are not participating, are simply trying to run errands, get home, go to work, whatever. And it's taken on kind of a violent undertone there with these. So that's some of the concern that I have. I do think that there's a couple of things that we have to have consideration here for. Wyndham is a municipality that has very strict guidelines for the police on when they can pursue these type of ATVs and off-road vehicles that are being operated on streets.
I think that's because of issues.
An incident.
Yeah.
Yes, and there was an incident where a young man was badly injured in an accident.
So they're afraid to pursue.
Absolutely. And that's justifiable. I mean, that's a huge expense and a huge liability for the towns. But with the capabilities that we have today, I do think that something else has to be done to also protect the people who are using the streets and roadways properly.
Yep.
Because when it comes down to it from a liability standpoint, if someone were to get hurt riding an ATV on the streets and they involve a vehicle that is registered, there's going to be some litigation involving that. It's probably going to be civil, and there's a chance that that person who was doing everything right, or trying to do everything right, could be held liable.
That's tough.
Yeah, those are concerns. The thing that I want to try and bring out about this is that there is something that we have to be concerned about with this idea of a mob mentality. One of the things that I tried to bring up about this Southington episode was that one of the assailants that was arrested was only 13 years old.
Right.
And while I don't think that a 13-year-old has the mental capacity to understand fully their actions, there's concern that when you have, in general, these are young people, and when you have a large group of them, that mob mentality can kind of break down what might be normal morals and what would be considered otherwise decent behavior. To have a group of people swarm around a vehicle and forcibly try and drag someone from a car who we don't know what led up to that, but that's got to be a very scary situation for somebody.
Traumatic.
You are vastly outnumbered. You have people who are being openly hostile and now kind of swarming around you.
There's more than just the physical aspect of it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's surely, some idea that with this mob mentality that there is a greater chance that there's going to be a bad outcome because somebody might not be expressing the same control that they might in another situation in this.
You don't know if they, are holding or you don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we saw something happen at the Cadillac Ranch in Southington just a week ago where there was someone that was shot, and that was supposedly over a money dispute over fixing a motorcycle. So there are concerns that everybody should have with these situations, and I think that Connecticut does have to start to look at doing a better job in enforcing some of these rules and making sure that the roadways still remain safe for people who are registering vehicles, insuring vehicles, and driving properly on the roads there.
Law functions best as a deterrent. And the deterrent for some young kid that's having a blast, running amok on a road in the middle of the night, is there's going to be severe punishment. And it's going to be swift, and you're going to get caught. And that deterrent is supposed to help inform their impressionable young minds that are easily swept up in the mayhem, in the fun.
But then Connecticut is going to say, well, if you're under 26 years old, you really didn't know what you were doing, so we can automatically adjust any sentencing that we have post-judicial system.
Right.
And that they are allowed to take that into consideration that, well, this kid was only 13 years old when he did this. You still stab somebody with a screwdriver.
Right. And things that are relevant should be taken into consideration. But there's consequences, and if you have, like, why do you see all the people getting more and more of their cars stolen out of their driveways by juveniles? Because these kids know that the consequences are a slap on the wrist at best. So it is a disservice to have laws that don't function as effective deterrents.
And I do think that at some point in the near future, we are going to have some sort of an incident in Connecticut where either one of these people is going to be killed riding their dirt bikes or ATVs on the streets because of a collision with a car, or there's going to be something violent that's going to happen, like we've been starting to see in lesser episodes this week.
Right.
So, I think that we do have to look at ways that we can help law enforcement to kind of mitigate some of these large gatherings and some of these large groups of vehicles that are not registered to be on our roads.
Right, and it's not just education that's tying up all these budget votes that are failing multiple times.
Right.
People understand, like with things like police protection and enforcement, they're getting less each year, and they're getting charged more for it. So that's just part of the general dissatisfaction, disheartening, mistrust, and so of course I'm going to vote no on this budget because I know I'm not getting the value I should out of the money that's being taken from me.
Yeah, and especially when you look at the infrastructure in Connecticut. We have done, notoriously in the past history, we have done a bad job of planning for infrastructure.
Right.
There's
Big time.
It doesn't take much to look right out the door of the studio that we're at to see that the footbridge has deteriorated to the point that it's unsafe, and now it's going to cost us a huge amount of money. Regular maintenance on buildings in Wyndham we've talked about in the past.
The roofs especially.
This is it's not just a Wyndham thing, it's a common denominator across Connecticut that proper upkeep and maintenance is not
routine maintenance
is not
happening.
properly addressed or budgeted for or considered, and it's just kind of pushing a larger expense down the road, and that's kind of where we are in many of these towns.
We love a
around here.
bottleneck in this town.
Planning for infrastructure requires, what's the economic term? Low time preference, meaning we're okay deferring gratification and investing in the future. It requires long-term thinking is a more vernacular phrase. Like you have to plan for the distant future to make infrastructure investments and
preventative measures.
Right, and that's just not the
status quo.
That's not the model that Connecticut or most other state governments, and certainly not the federal government, operates on. It's grab what you can now, spend what you can now.
Don't worry about the kids.
Who cares about the future? Who cares about kids or grandkids? Don't even bother having kids. Problem solved.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of people are thinking these days, too.
It's absolutely how people are thinking.
Sad.
And it shows in the numbers.
Yeah. I know I would love to have more, but, you can't. Like, it's unaffordable now. Mm-hmm. It would be a disservice to that child.
And there's a lot of people that are, starting to feel that type of sentiment.
We need hope.
It is. It's unfortunate that that's the state of affordability in Connecticut that we're at, and you hear people all the time saying, "I'm making choices between paying this bill and having money for groceries this week, or I'm deferring and paying a bill on a credit card, just kicking it down the road with interest." Individuals struggle when they live like that, but it doesn't seem like municipalities do. And
exactly.
That's the difference that people have to recognize, is that you wouldn't budget yourself like that. If you had a business, you wouldn't budget it like that. But when it comes to spending other people's money in the form of taxes, it seems like all that common sense goes out the window.
Right. Well, municipalities and the state government does not have the magical printing press that the federal government does.
True.
So the math will eventually catch up with the municipality and a state government, and it has for plenty of towns.
Yeah.
There's famous cases like Detroit and other cities that just are essentially bankrupt. But
Bridgeport right here in Connecticut.
Right,
Like
so
Bridgeport is overseen by the state
right,
for educational costs and stuff because of that.
right, and the state will eventually face that, but it doesn't. They deal with the perception. The perception is different when you've got tax dollars. It's not. They're not in a marketplace where they have to earn money from consumers.
Certainly not. There's plenty of it.
Right. So it's just it's a different magic fairy tale land of spending, and it's not like that's one of the drawbacks of democracy is that it's not like a family type, a father that's planning for his grandchildren's inheritance. It's not like that.
Right.
It's exactly what I said a minute ago. It's grab what you can now because you might not be in the next election cycle. So everything is tilted towards, wield whatever power you can, spend whatever money you can, line whatever pockets you can now.
And lie about it. Say that you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing.
Yep.
This is what I've done. Pat me on the back.
That's
Give me a
what
blind
we see with
check.
one-party rule for decades and decades. And that's what we're experiencing here. We have about 10 minutes left in our show for July 23rd. I want to turn to one more topic that has been something we've talked about because it does directly relate to affordability, and it kind of relates to something that Sarah had brought up earlier in the show. And I'm going to change from calling this 8002, which was the House bill that we've been discussing, because it's now Public Act 25-1. Specifically dealing with affordable housing in Connecticut. I have two things that I want to mention here. First is that following the passage of 8002 and making a public act, we've seen a stimulus in Connecticut of development. We've seen apartments going up. We've seen commercial space being converted from commercial to mixed use and some residential and stuff like that across Connecticut. One of the things that I'm starting to hear is that within the next month or so, maybe 2 months, you're going to start hearing that there are great concerns over limitations in the infrastructure of our electrical grid in Connecticut to be able to support the type of housing development and growth that the state of Connecticut would like to see. We know that we run on a very tight capacity for electricity in Connecticut. Over the past few years, we've seen our regular sources of electrical generation decreasing to our alternative forms of distribution from solar, wind, nuclear. I think that this is going to really be something that people are going to start to hear about. And it's that even Eversource is saying we are not in a position where this type of development is going to continue to provide I'm going to say a not just useful capacity, but a proper and reliable electrical grid if we continue this type of development. A couple of things that I want to bring up about this are that originally there was going to be an exemption with Public Act 25-1 that would allow 5 towns to be exempt from providing housing development plans for affordable housing. That number has gone up to 20, and that's where we came up with this conversation earlier about this. 20 municipalities, and this is based on a formula that's used, excuse me, and the way that this determination comes about as to which towns are exempt, excuse me, is using the adjusted equalized net grand list per capita. So what they look at is the grand list amount for each municipality in Connecticut, the population. They put those into a formula that comes up with a per capita amount to show which towns have the most money per capita, which towns have the least money per capita. This is what we talked about in the first segment. In Connecticut, those 20 towns most of them are the ones that you would expect.
Right.
Bridgeport, Bristol, East Hartford, Meriden, Naugatuck, New Britain, New Haven, New London, Norwich, Waterbury, West Haven, Wyndham.
These are the towns that are exempt.
These are the towns that are exempt. The other ones, besides Wyndham in this area, are Brooklyn, Plainfield, Sprague, and Sterling. Okay. What I want people to understand about those towns is that those towns historically are the ones that have received more of our state taxpayer money. Whether it's in the form of grants that they can apply for because they have been identified as financially distressed communities or environmentally challenged communities, or however the state legislature wants to word the way that they provide grants to these towns. These have been the recipients of a lot of taxpayer money, and I've said this back a number of election cycles that we all put in to Hartford in taxes. That money doesn't get distributed equally. And it certainly doesn't come back to Eastern Connecticut at the rate that it comes back to Western Connecticut. Those 20 towns alone account for 52% of the government funding for affordable housing. That number jumps up even further when you look at the housing vouchers that are available. Those 20 towns take up 66% of all of the housing vouchers. So these are already communities that get substantially more funding than the other 149 towns in Connecticut. When you take that even a step further, to think that these towns in general are the ones that have had some of the worst management issues and been under one-party control for a long time, I don't see this as being again, this one-size-fits-all kind of legislature is one that is not going to be sustainable because, again, it's directing money towards very specific areas, the same as the Pequot funding that we've talked about at times. That started off in virtually every town in Connecticut got a little bit of money. Well, now that's been whittled down to where it's certain towns that get specific priority. And this is what we're seeing over and over again in Connecticut. And it comes from that one-party rule. So why this isn't going to work is that, again, we've done a bad job in supporting the infrastructure. And when you look at even right here in Wyndham and the Cards Mill substation that distributes electricity to this area, that's one that probably needs over $3 million in upgrades and enhancements to bring it up to where we're going to need it for future anticipation or for future expected growth and anticipated demands that will come up in the future. You look at now, they're trying to put large distribution facilities and data centers and AI that they want to bring into Connecticut that are huge consumers of not only electricity but also our natural resources in the way of water. If anybody wants to look at how this has worked, take a look at what's going on in Lowell, Mass. And there is a big data center there that's causing a whole bunch of problems.
Isn't the water all brown? Isn't it brown?
Yeah, and they said they're using between 60 and 125,000 gallons of water per day. So, again, I'll have you guys weigh in for these last couple minutes here. When we see this type of loss of local control and we see this type of loss of home rule going on, these towns need to start to speak up. And we need people in these towns to make sure that this type of thing doesn't progress because it is going to be detrimental to some of these small towns here. You guys want to weigh in real quick before we go?
Yeah,
Just
so
a couple minutes left
big
here.
problems require big solutions, and big in the sense of something's got to be different. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and I'll keep saying it. None of these things are going to change if we still expect the state of Connecticut to have a list of problems a list of areas of our life that it's responsible for that's 10 miles long. If the state is responsible for figuring out housing, if the state is responsible for figuring out education, if the state is responsible for A through Z and then some, budgets will continue to grow. Dissatisfaction will continue to grow. We have to take some things back to the drawing board and say, okay, should we be solving this from a top-down level at all. And that's going to require a new crop of people going into Hartford. It's going to require a responsible unwinding of things that we've already cornered ourselves into. And we're not going to solve any of these problems by just adjusting a few minor dials here and there.
All right. Well said, Brian. I appreciate that. We are down to the last minute of our show here, so I want to remind everybody that they can tune in to Unfiltered on Mondays from 3 to 4 and hear some of the same hosts join Mike Saucier there. Or you can come back next Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. and listen to Right Now. Again, this has been 95.3 FM, 1400 AM, WILI, and we will talk to you all next week.